Hello, everyone. We're back. All About America's Team is finally back, brought to you by Delahanty Media. I am Ray Nickens, joined as always with my fellow co host.
Owen DeChico.
And today is Franchise Tag Day. And if you are unsure of what that is basically what happens when a team does not want to pay a certain player a lot of money. So they just pay him the set billing for a franchise type player, and that varies based on the position. I We also have a very interesting day as there have been some blockbuster deals that have happened today. One of those being Russell Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos. We will get into Aaron Rodgers signing a 4-year, $200 million contract with the Green Bay Packers. So, just a little prerequisite to that conversation. He totally swindled that organization, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And also, we aren't going to leave you hanging with Dallas Cowboys talk, as we have topics. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about with them, including Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott, DeMarcus Lawrence, a potential signing of Anthony Hitchens coming back to Dallas, or even Tyrann Mathieu, and also just go into some draft needs as well as our season grades for the positions from last season. So, with that all being said, we're happy to be back and let's get right into it. So, Owen, I will let you take us away. Get the ship
Okay,
out of the
awesome.
harbor.
Awesome. Yeah, so today was definitely an interesting day. I was not expecting I'm sure Aaron Rodgers didn't even know if he was going to play football a week ago. So it was definitely interesting to see him come back, and we knew going into the offseason that Denver was going to get a quarterback, whether it was Aaron or Russell, or if they were gonna draft a guy at number 9. But they are definitely the phrase "a quarterback away." That phrase is the Denver Broncos in its entirety. And my biggest thing is that when it was announced that Russell was going to be going to Denver, I was like, okay, great. Like, one, the NFC gets a lot easier just because it's I even though the Seahawks haven't been great recently, they're still one of the teams that could always make a run throughout any portion of the season. And I was unaware on how much Denver was going to have to trade, because usually it's a lot of first round picks, but actually Denver gave away a lot of they gave way more players than I thought they were going to. They got rid of Noah Fant, which was surprising to say the least. I was expecting them to have to get rid of either Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant maybe, or even Pat Surtain, depending on how many draft picks they were willing to give up. They only had to give up 2 first round picks, which is pretty great, but the Seattle did get a lot in return for their quarterback, and they got Drew Lock. Who knows? Maybe he'll be the quarterback for the year, because before the combine, everyone thought, like, okay, Malik Willis isn't going to go until the middle of the first round, but who knows? He may be long gone before they pick at number 9, which I wouldn't be surprised because of how well he performed at the combine. And it was funny when Rodgers was signed. You saw Jerry Jeudy. I don't know. I have to start following him on Twitter because he's rather comical. Like, he posted like crying emojis, and then like a few hours later, as soon as Russell got traded, he was like rather excited because the first time in his career he's gonna be with a halfway decent quarterback. But the funny thing, or a quarterback better than Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. But the funny thing for Packers fans is, I think Aaron Rodgers is 38, and I think we can all agree that Aaron Rodgers is a much better quarterback than Russell Wilson is. But if you were to trade Aaron Rodgers, I could only imagine the type of haul that a team would have had to give up if Russell Wilson cost that amount. And in the future, or in the present, signing him is probably a great idea. But 4 or 5 years from now, when his contract is up, or even next year if he decides to retire, they're gonna be his dead cap in a few years is gonna be really bad, because he didn't take all that much money in his first season, and in the first seasons that they were able to sign, they were able to give Devontae Adams the tags. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that contract plays out. And I was surprised to see how much Denver had to give up, given that Russell wasn't healthy all of last year. So it'll be really interesting to see. And we now have the best division in football, the AFC West. And as of right now, the Raiders are definitely number 4 in that division. But it'll be really cool to see what happens there, because the Chargers, who are as of right now are probably the 3rd best team in that division, with Denver being number 2 and obviously the Chiefs being number 1. But Chargers have a lot of cap space, and if they can make the right moves, they could be primed to make a playoff push. But it was definitely a really big day for football, and the best part about it was that it was leaked on the Pat McAfee show. So good for Pat.
Yeah,
That
Pat McAfee is one of
legend.
the more entertaining hosts of a sports show. If you have not listened or watched the Pat McAfee show, I would encourage you to do so, as that is a place where you are going to get, I don't know if an objective is the best word, but it's not going to be your typical sports talk show on an ESPN or Fox Sports. It's a
Yeah.
lot more real and a lot more flexible and a lot more fun.
Mhm.
But anyway, my opinions on these deal is, Owen knows my opinions of Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I think they're both very good quarterbacks. One of them being a Hall of Fame talented quarterback, but with not the results that everyone expected out of him. Russell Wilson has he is very able and capable of being an MVP caliber quarterback, because he has had multiple seasons where he has started off in the race as number 1. And unfortunately, those years, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson ended up winning those MVPs. And in a perfect world where those quarterbacks didn't exist, Russell Wilson would probably be a 2-time MVP quarterback. But with that being said, the Denver Broncos have once again, they've done it again. They have bought a quarterback in order to try and get to the Super Bowl. They did it with Peyton Manning, who did deliver them 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 Super Bowl. And now they've done it with Russell Wilson. And I totally expected that to be Aaron Rodgers. I believe that we did a end of season, off season poll where I said, yep, Aaron Rodgers is definitely gone. He's going to the Broncos. And I was wrong. It was actually Russell Wilson who they ended up taking. And honestly, I am looking back on it, I'm not surprised. I think all Aaron Rodgers wanted really was security, especially with Jordan Love being drafted. And the last 2 years, he actually bet on himself. He won 2 MVPs and did not get it done in the postseason, but his 2 MVP awards were enough. And obviously his regular season numbers of throwing very minimal interceptions and a large amount of touchdowns really was enough for the Packers, and especially when he missed a game due to his COVID fiasco, when Jordan Love had to step in and play, and they realized just the huge drop off of Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. That really just kind of forced the Packers' hand. And say what you want about Aaron Rodgers as a person or in the postseason, he's easily a top 15 all-time quarterback, maybe top 10, just marginally based on what he's done in his career. And if he were to get another championship or 2 in these last 4 years of his deal, then he would definitely cement himself. Well, he's already cemented himself in Canton, but cemented himself amongst the Elways and the Montanas, the Bradys, the Peyton Mannings, and anyone else you want to put up there. But
Yeah, of course.
I think Russell Wilson is going to be much better in Denver this year than he was in Seattle last year, just based on the new change of scenery. And also, not to say that Seattle was depleted of talent, because they were not, but he's going to a place where he has a lot of young talent. Cordell Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, not T Higgins. There's I'll have to Google his name, but there's another very
Tim
capable
Patrick.
Tim Patrick, and also their defense. Did we cut out?
Yes, I think we did.
Okay. Um,
You
what
were
was the
talking
last?
about you were saying about how they have Tim Patrick, who destroyed the Cowboys secondary. You said he had Jerry
Yes,
Jeudy, Courtland
yes,
Sutton, who was injured this past year. So I'm sure he's very excited to deal with to have to be playing with Russell
yes,
Wilson. And they did get
yes,
rid of Noah Fant, but it'll be interesting to see who they bring in as a tight end. But also one thing before you continue, for if going back or piggybacking on Ray's Pat McAfee um, hype comment. If you are looking to laugh, you should look up Pat McAfee, the reaction. One of the co hosts is a big Packers fan, and you should have seen his reaction to when the Packers signed or drafted Jordan Love. It's definitely a great video to watch. But yeah, it'll be. And also, Von Miller wants to go back, and it's crazy how they traded him for a second and third round pick, and they're going to get him back. So very very good on Denver for doing that.
yeah, yeah, and then also go back to their roster. The running backs, Javonte Williams, who is a star rookie in the league, and then also Melvin Gordon at running back. So the and of course their offensive line being far being by far an
Superior.
improvement over the Seattle offensive line. Not to mention their defense being very strong in Denver. So I just think it's a great situation for Russell Wilson, and this division's going to be tough, but the Broncos went 7-9 with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater as their quarterbacks, and adding a Super Bowl champion quarterback to the mix is easily an additional 2 or 3 games in a playoff berth. So there, I'm happy for them. Now, as for the Packers, they have a little bit of a challenge ahead of them with all the money that they've thrown at Aaron Rodgers. They're already kind of in trouble with the cap. They're trying to re-sign Devontae Adams as well. Preston Smith, I believe, is up for an extension. They have a lot of people that they want to bring back, but they might not be able to bring back. So we'll see what they're able to do. Maybe they'll slide some money under the table to Roger Goodell to extend their cap. Who knows? But I'm interested to see what the Packers end up doing. But I mean, I don't believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to retire next year. I think that all of that BS was just to kind of paint a picture of him to the media and to the public. But I think that if Tom Brady can play till 45 years old, Aaron Rodgers can easily play till he's 45 years old. I don't know if he'll end up doing that, but I think this 4-year contract was a good investment for the Green Bay Packers in the future.
Yeah. And it also stinks that Jordan Love may never be a starter in this league. And he was drafted in the same year that CD was. So this is going to be his third year. So hopefully they can find, well, after his performance in his only start this past year, he may no his trade value may be in the negative, but hopefully he'll be able to get a job somewhere at least and be able to show what he did, because I don't really know if he's going to want to be a full-time backup anymore.
Well, I will say that there is hope for him because Aaron Rodgers did the same thing under Brett Favre. He sat for 3 or 4 years, and also another quarterback who did the same thing, a former Cowboys quarterback, Tony Romo. He was drafted in the 2003 draft, and he didn't start his first game until 2006. So there is still a chance for a quarterback to sit for 3 years, as much as it's not expected anymore. Even Steve Young sat for 2 or 3 or 4 years behind Joe Montana. So even if you are sitting, it just gives you a better opportunity to learn how to be an NFL quarterback. And then when you get your chance, just don't screw it up. So
Exactly.
that's what I'd have to say for the people who are not saying that you are doing this, but for the Jordan Love sympathizers who are saying that he is being screwed over by Aaron Rodgers or the Green Bay Packers or
Yeah.
whoever you want to blame for his
Yeah.
tra- um for his situation.
Yeah, it was really weird because they traded up for him, and I think in a perfect world for Jordan Love, if he played well last year, Aaron Rodgers may not have gotten the extension that he got. He might have
I
been traded
agree.
or just been like, you're causing way too much pressure on us. Like, go do your own thing in Denver or whatever. And I think that's what Denver was trying to do by signing the Packers offensive coordinator as their head coach. I think that's what they were trying to do. Hackett, I believe, is his last name,
Hmm.
but they got a quarterback who is still very, very good and will hopefully be able to bring them to the playoffs this season. But what this also does do is this is very rough for any AFC fan and or any fan of a team in the AFC. But this does 12 hours ago, Dak was top five, or just all these quarterbacks went up a slot. And the top three for the NFC is now Aaron Rodgers at number one. And then it's Stafford and Dak. And I'm sure people can go back and forth on who's better, but Stafford did win a ring this past year. So he'll
And had a
go in number
game and a
two.
game-winning drive in
Yep,
the Super Bowl.
exactly. So he'll be number two. And I think we can all agree that Kyler is worse than Dak, even if you want to go based off how they handle themselves. I think Dak is far and above, or yeah, he's way better. Just an overall person, how he carries himself. So the top four quarterbacks in the NFC are now Aaron, Stafford, Dak, and Kyler, and it'll be really really interesting to see how that plays because now teams that were on the cusp of making the playoffs last year or now have a much better chance. And I think this is also a great time for any NFC team that is a player away to put all their eggs in the basket because this may never happen for quite some time. And I'm sure we're going to get into this later, but I can only I'll put a lot of money on it. Whatever reports we were hearing earlier in the week about Dallas wanting to cut these players, I'm sure that Russell getting traded would definitely make them second guess because they have a better chance now than they have a few years ago of being a top three seed because Tampa's not going to be as good, and a lot of reasons why teams aren't going to be as good, but Dallas has a real shot to be a top three team in the NFC if they play to their potential and if they don't make any dumb decisions in the offseason. So hopefully they'll be able to restructure because I found out that players don't have any say in if their contracts get restructured. I think that's the case at least. Not 100% sure, but yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But we can get into that later. But that is my take on the NFC kind of shaking up.
Yeah. So really, the NFC. This is definitely a new thing for me because growing up, the NFC was always the stronger
100%.
conference, and the AFC now is loaded. The Broncos are going to be a top tier team. The Chargers are up and coming. Cincinnati Bengals just came off a Super Bowl loss. The Chiefs are going to be back with Mahomes.
I'm a homeboy.
And I mean, even a team like the Raiders, who barely snuck into the playoffs, can do a little bit of damage because they have a decent quarterback.
And the Ravens with a healthy Lamar
Yeah,
Jackson.
Ravens, Lamar Jackson, the Steel. Who knows what the Steelers will end up doing?
If they get Malik Willis, they could definitely be there to get a wild card, or even if the Bengals do have a Super Bowl slump, as people call it, they could definitely be there.
Yeah, I mean the AFC is just all across the map. They're very talented division. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that side. But as for the NFC, this is a great opportunity for teams like the San Francisco 49ers or the Dallas Cowboys, as you said, or even like another NFC East team. God forbid they get stronger in the NFC East. But to make a playoff run because there's really only two teams that you have to worry about in the NFC, and that's the Packers and the Rams. And other
Yep.
than that, it's really wide open for the rest of the division. I will say though that doesn't really mean much to me. Um, at the end of it, because if I were to do a demonstration for all of the YouTube viewers, I have this ruler, and on this ruler I have the Cowboys. This is the Cowboys. So the Cowboys in the regular season, they're up here towards the end of the ruler, and as the playoffs come closer and closer, they slowly make their way backwards. And then ultimately, when the playoffs come, they deplete back to zero. So, really, what it's going to come down to, regardless of the talent in the NFC, this team did just lose to Jimmy Garoppolo in the postseason. So,
So did
it's
Aaron Rodgers though,
so
and
did Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers did as well. But the Cowboys, get they gotta turn their culture, their culture and their playoff expectations around in order to be considered as a threat, because there's always the pre and I've done this too. There's always the preseason expectations where you look at the conference around you or the schedule and you're like, oh, this is going to be a breeze. We're going to win all these games. We're going to win the Super Bowl, or not the Super Bowl. We're going to win in the playoffs and then maybe be in the Super Bowl. And then you get to the end of the season and you have the San Francisco 49ers moment.
who
So,
I said would win that game. So
yes, Owen is a prophet. But I will admit that this is the year to get it done. However, will the Cowboys get it done? I do not think so, but that could change depending on if they sign anybody, or if they do something that I don't think they will do, which we may get into later. But I do agree with you that and also I do agree with Dak being a top 3 quarterback now, because there's very marginal competition in the NFC for him. Um, but with
yeah,
that being
Jalen Hurts
said,
is now top 5 at his position,
yes,
or
but
maybe.
with that being said, that does not entitle me to give him any sort of elevation of um, where I see him overall league wise, because I'm still getting over his performance against San Francisco. And as I've told Owen, the off season for me doesn't start until April. So this is actually everyone is actually lucky that I'm here, because
Yes, very blessed.
I've been in hibernation when it comes to Cowboys football. But with that being said, yes, the NFC is very vulnerable for anybody who wants to take it, and we'll see where the Cowboys are after the draft, and we'll just kind of make some predictions season wide then.
Yeah, the draft is 6 or 7 weeks away. There's a lot of different rumors going around with players that we're going to get into in a few seconds of what's going to happen. Um, but who knows? The last few seasons, the last 2 seasons to be exact, Dallas has kind of been gifted a top 3 or top 4 player in the draft, and last season happened to be a top 1 or 2 player in the whole draft. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens, because a lot of players performed well, especially a lot of Baylor athletes. And I think that what this shows is that there are a lot of tweets going around. All football players or any skill position like wide receiver, cornerback, safety, they should all be on track too. Because I think a few of the players for the Baylor that performed well, they were all on track. And I think I don't know if Denzel Mims was if he performed in track, but he definitely ran way better than I thought he would, which I'm sure was a lot to do with the track coaches helping him out in the off season. It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens in the draft with teams moving up. And I remember last season or last draft season, a few teams traded up a few weeks before the draft, which was really weird. The Eagles moved around a lot. The 49ers moved around a lot to get Trey Lance, but it'll be really interesting. I think that's a really good segue into our next topic. Unless you want to add anything else, Ray.
Yeah, just quick point of thought on Baylor athletics. Baylor football, even before the days of Matt Rule, when Art Briles was the coach and Kendall Briles was the offensive coordinator, they were very known for their track star wide receivers.
Yep.
Going back to Josh Gordon, Kendall Wright, Terrence Williams, um, etc. And even going back into this combine, when I saw that Tyquan Thornton originally ran a 4.21 and broke the record before it was moved back to 4.28, I was like, when did he learn how to run this fast?
Yeah, exactly.
And also the cornerback who did run a 4.2, I thought that was also
Barnes.
pretty spectacular because he was the guy who was always getting beat in coverage. So I was kind of confused in that department as well. But I did hear something interesting while we're on the combine talk from listening to the return of Undisputed yesterday. I listened to a segment about the combine, and they were saying, and both Skip and Shannon shockingly had the same opinion regarding this, is they were saying that they think that the combine is influencing teams way too much than it should, and
Yeah.
it should only be used as a way to verify what you see on film. And I thought that was a very interesting take, especially when you have the Bengals drafting John Ross in the top 10 in that draft, and then him seeing the field very little and also being hurt and now being on his second team.
Yeah.
Especially with these Baylor players being really fast, I think that they will both get drafted now, especially with their times. However, I didn't see, and this is coming from a Baylor student and also a fan, I didn't see very much out of them during the year to warrant them being drafted high just based on their 40 time. Because
Yeah.
in
Thornton had a
Taekwondo,
few. Yeah.
in Tyquan Thornton's case, 2 years ago he was non-existent. That could have been the
Mhm.
quarterback, and then this year I didn't see him flash really until later in the year when they changed quarterbacks. So, and then with Barnes, I really have nothing really to say about Barnes other than I saw him get burned against Texas live. So, I mean, I'm sure that Barnes, he's going to be, any cornerback with that speed is going to be valuable wherever you get him. I do see him being drafted higher than Thornton. However, we'll see in it. We'll see if that actually happens. But I think he's going to be he has some better chance of getting NFL time than and a longer term than Tyquan
Yeah.
Thornton, in my opinion.
And I think the Baylor athlete that's going to be drafted the highest is Petrie, and he's going to go in the second round. He'll be a second round guy, and I hope he falls to Dallas just because he'd help. But who knows? The Jets could take him really high. They definitely are in need of a cornerback, safety. So
The Jets are in need of a lot of things, whether
yes.
our producer Nick Delahanty wants to say so or not.
Yeah,
They are a long ways to go before they make any sort of before they have
push.
any certain thought of even making the playoffs. And that's with me really liking Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it'll
Just to
be. I saw one one YouTuber that I follow pretty heavily say that he thinks that the Jets could make a Bengals type leap this year, which is interesting, especially with the AFC East. If for whatever reason the Bills kind of drop off, Miami's not really going to do all that much
Oh yeah,
unless they
I forgot
find a
about the
quarterback.
Bills too in the AFC. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, exactly. There's too many to remember. But we're gonna move on to D-Law, Amari Cooper, and restructuring, and we'll get the easy one out of the way first. So Dallas, it was rumored a few weeks ago that they were going to restructure Dak's contract. They did restructure his contract, and they also restructured Zach Martin's contract. And I feel so bad for Zach Martin and Tyron Smith. I feel like every single offseason their contracts are picked at. So that's going to open up a lot of money now, but also hopefully Dallas did give Dalton Schultz the tag, which I like. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of it. It's going to be a $10.9 million cap hit or something like that. I personally am a fan of it. I think that we can get into that later. But a lot of things have been going around about D-Law and Amari. I don't know if these are like Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones talking to people and it getting leaked, or if it's just people making up like things of their own, because it's very odd that stuff like this would be leaked, because if it gets leaked that you want to cut Amari, and then you say we're gonna try to trade him, no one's gonna want to give you a first or second round pick if they can just, because Amari he won't be in the wave, he won't be on the wave list, like anyone, he'll be free to sign with anyone as soon as he's cut. And it's interesting Dallas's methods, but I've learned that there is a method to their madness, even though it may not be the one that all the fans like. It is what it is. But I just want to go into like a little bit of a dive into each player and why I think they should stay. And then Ray, I know that you and I are going to have very different thoughts on this topic, but
Oh, yes.
it'll be interesting. So first, I just want to go into a little bit of what D-Law did this season. D-Law did not have a great season, mostly because he was injured. But in the games that D-Law did play in, he played.
Can I really quickly stop you? We're gonna go
Of
backwards
course.
actually, because our favorite Dallas Cowboys Twitter man, Mr. Defy, recently commented crying emojis on a tweet from JPA Football, and I'm just gonna
JPA is good.
I'm gonna read it live. The report is that the Washington Commanders offered a more attractive trade package for quarterback Russell Wilson than the Broncos, but Seattle preferred to move Wilson out of the conference, per Kevin Sheelan, DC.
And also Russell Wilson has a no
Thank you,
trade clause, I
Seattle.
believe. So
Thank you,
he also had
Seattle
to decline it.
Seahawks. Thank you, Seattle Seahawks, for not ruining the NFC East.
I mean, what if you put Russell Wilson in there? Their offensive line isn't all that great. Brandon Shreve, who was a really good draft pick a few years ago, he's probably gonna go to the Bengals. So yeah, Russell Wilson was gonna be a better right now pick as for quarterback for them. But what's he gonna do for them long term? Because
By the way, Brandon Sheaf, back when
yes,
I engaged in Madden franchise,
yes.
he retired in the second season after I gave him a very large contract.
And that is why you have to turn off the stories on the age stories, because they always try to get rid of players like Trent Williams and Zach Martin. But that is another topic for another day.
Yes.
But personally, I think that cutting both Amari and D-Law would be a very bad idea, or trading them at all, because I think me personally, I noticed it right away that the defense got a lot better when D-Law was on the field. And I think out of the games that you saw that, he played in the Philadelphia game where they blew them out, and he had an interception. Sorry, he had a sack and just overall played really well. He also was in the loss to Arizona. He did play in the Washington game, which was a blowout, and that is the game that he had the pick six in. He played in the most of the games. Out of the games that he played in, they only lost two. And in one of the first games that he was back, you could definitely see that this presence was good. And I think that a lot of people, when you look at a kind of contract that someone has, a lot of people just look at your sack numbers and nothing else, which in my opinion is not the smartest thing to do, because there's a lot else to football besides sack numbers. And I think that DeMarcus Lawrence, he did have a lot more sacks when he got franchise tagged and when it was in the last year of his deal. I don't know if that was because he put more effort in or if he was healthier. But sadly, D-Law has gotten the short end of the stick with injuries, and it will be, hopefully he will stay on this team. Dallas, in their infinite wisdom, asked him to take a pay cut, and he declined, as he should. And I just think that if you do cut, or if you do get rid of D-Law, that makes your defensive line a lot worse, because then you're kind of, if you cut him, Randy Gregory is like, oh, now they have to re-sign me, and I can kind of say however much money I want, because if they don't re-sign me, then Micah Parsons cannot play both sides of the defense. He cannot play both positions of defensive and linebacker. And you have to basically Dallas picked the two worst positions to get rid of players at, because wide receiver, if you cut Amari, you're going to give Michael Gallup a lot of money, which I don't really think is necessarily worth $10+ million per year coming off an ACL tear. And then and Cedric Wilson, Dallas, for whatever reason, think that every single player or every single free agent is going to want to come back for like $2 million, which is not the case anymore. And if you don't bring back Cedric Wilson, if you cut Amari, Amari could go to the Eagles and he can go to Washington. Two teams that were very interested in him when Amari hit the free agent pool. And in my opinion, a $20 million cap hit is much better than him going up against your number 2 cornerback and torching you 2 times a year. And I think what Dallas was kind of thinking about doing was cutting Amari and then giving that money to Cedric Wilson and Gallup. But now that they know that Cedric was going to have a much bigger demand than they originally thought, hopefully that lets them know that cutting Amari is not the greatest idea. And I think that Dallas is the only team that feels like they're handicapped with the salary cap, because you look at the Packers, they have a lot of salary cap issues talking about earlier, and they just found a way to give their quarterback $163 or $153 million guaranteed, and then give Devontae Adams the wide receiver franchise tag, which is, besides quarterback, one of the highest franchise tags in the league. And you also see the Chiefs, who apparently are going to give Tyreek Hill a $20 million a year contract, and every other team finds a way to get around the salary cap besides Dallas. And I think that given last season and how underperforming their playoff run was, if you get rid of 2 of your top 5 players, or top 10 if you want to be generous, then you become much worse as an overall team. And we all know that they're not going to be spending big bucks on a free agent player, because the last time Dallas gave big bucks to a guy in free agency, I don't even know. It was probably when they signed Alan Hearns, when I was very excited that they got him, but then he ended up breaking his leg in 2018. Very, very sad. But Dallas does not like to make moves in free agency, and hopefully they're able to figure some stuff out. But Ray, I know that you and I are going to have 2 very different thoughts on the matter, and I would love to get into that with you. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I will start with Amari Cooper. And at the beginning of last season, we had a conversation about him in particular, where we did is this player overrated or underrated? And I picked Amari Cooper as a rated player for the Dallas Cowboys. And one of those reasons that I said was he is way too inconsistent when playing on the road, and he is very, if you are betting on a player to disappear in a big game, he is the player to put the money on. And while he did increase his 100-yard receiving games on the road from 0 to 2 last season, there was still a very large quantity of games where Amari Cooper did not perform up to the standard of a wide receiver 1. So, and while I will acknowledge, though, that when Dak Prescott looked like he was 1 game away from being moved on from in 2018, I believe, is when they traded for Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper did save that man's career, in which he completely turned around Dak Prescott. He clearly turned around his career trend from going down to up, where we see a very different Dak Prescott today than we did before Amari Cooper got there. With that being said, I think Dak Prescott is at the point in his career where he no longer needs Amari Cooper to be successful. I think he's grown as a quarterback. I think he is a lot wiser than he was 2 or 3 seasons ago, and I do not think that losing Amari Cooper would be that much of a hurt for him as a player, especially with them having CeeDee Lamb and signing Dalton Schultz, who has become Dak Prescott's security blanket, who is not, it used to be Amari Cooper, it is now Dalton Schultz. So I think that even those two by himself is a decent enough wide receiving core. And with Michael Gallup tearing his ACL, there he's not going to be able to bargain with the Cowboys with the torn ACL. So I think the
No,
Cowboys are very, very likely to sign him. They have a much better chance of signing him than they would Cedric Wilson.
he's gonna want like 10 to 12 million. Like Dallas went in wanting to give him like 6, and they like laughed at his offer because Dallas thinks that they can give players these really bad contracts and they're just gonna be like, yes, please. But it's I have a rebuttal to your Amari thing, but I'd like for you to continue going into finishing that and then going into your D-Law, and then I will give a rebuttal on both.
Yeah. I mean, I even think 10 million is very fair to give Michael Gallup. And at that point, you have a core of Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. And if you can bring back Cedric Wilson, great. If not, you can find another Cedric Wilson in the draft because it's wide receiver 3s or 4s are much easier to find than wide receiver 1s. So Amari Cooper, I am not saying that he is not a good receiver. He is a very good receiver. However, in Oakland, he was inconsistent. In Dallas, he was inconsistent. And I think in order for the Cowboys to make that step from good but not great to great and a contender, they have to have consistent players on their team. So I think cutting Amari Cooper, while it may be harmful short term, even with the weaker NFC, this is the year to do it because it gives you time to. It gives you a season to where you can get away with that. Well, as later on, if the NFC were to get stronger, then you wouldn't be able to. But yeah, I think I just think that at this point, I don't know if re-signing Amari Cooper is the best option because it brings inconsistency back to your team, and I think it would be much wiser to just get rid of that inconsistency altogether and just take on the consequence, especially with them gaining a lot much more cap space than they would if they were to keep him on the team. Moving on to DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence, he did come back and play a lot better in those 4 or 5 games that we saw him than he has played in the last 2 seasons. And I did not expect them to get rid of him, especially, but and this is with also once again saying that these are rumors, so we really don't know if this actually happened. But I think that DeMarcus Lawrence, he is in this today, he is much more likely to get cut than he would have been last offseason, especially with the emergence of Randy Gregory, who had a very solid season on the defensive line. We had those other defensive line players who flashed, who gave good production on the defensive line. The run defense was a lot better. And then, of course, having Micah Parsons coming off the edge, coming up the middle, having such a huge season from him as well. The defensive line for the Dallas Cowboys is probably the strongest part of the defense, whereas it used to be the weakest part of the defense. I think the secondary needs a lot more in the offseason than the defensive line. And if they were to get rid of DeMarcus Lawrence, then I could see them going after a top first round defensive line player in the first round, where you could, if you play your cards right and a little bit of luck and do the right scouting, you could replace DeMarcus Lawrence with a rookie on a rookie deal. But while I don't think that it's like necessary to cut DeMarcus Lawrence, I think they could do it and replace him a lot easier than you think.
I do think that I do agree with what you said, where he played a lot better. It's difficult to all of the premier defensive linemen, unless a lot of quarterbacks go in the first round, they're gonna go. I saw some things where George Karlaftis, he may drop to number 24, but a lot of the top like 10 players, they're mainly on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion, at least, and a few of them are defensive linemen. You have the kid from Oregon. You as well have the kid from Michigan, Hutchinson and Thibodeau, and
Definitely
those
not going to
two
get
are
him.
100% no, and they'll be top 5 picks, but who knows? Dallas always finds a way to figure things
I
out. But
mean, DeMarcus Lawrence going back
second round pick.
was not a top 10 pick. He was drafted in the second round.
Yeah.
So
Dallas does love themselves some Boise State alums.
there are going to be gems in the draft, and this draft with the it's a lot weaker in the quarterback department, but it is a very, very talented wide receiver draft.
Yes.
So I could see a lot of wide receivers going early, and that could push some defensive players back into the draft, depending on how greedy some teams are to get stronger in offense, or even just the Jets just being like, we need 3-4 wide receivers on our roster. Just a little shot at the Jets fans. But trying to get positions that you really do not need over the positions that you do actually need. But
I do hope that Dallas go, if he's available, I hope they select an offensive lineman, hopefully Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. I think that if you can secure that offensive lineup, then the team will go a lot further. But who knows what will happen in the future. But Ray, did you want to say anything before I go into the rebuttal of a lifetime?
yes, no.
Okay.
Go into the rebuttal of the lifetime, or of
Okay.
a lifetime.
So Amari Cooper, this was his second lowest amount of receptions in his 6 or 7 year career, I believe. He's only 27, which I feel like he's been in the league a lot longer than a lot. I feel like he hasn't been in the league as long as I thought he was.
Correct.
Or
Yes.
he's a lot younger than I thought he was. So I'm just gonna go based on his targets and his receptions because it's a lot lower than people would think. So his best game of the year was opening night where he caught 13 balls and went for 140. Then after that he caught 3 balls week 2. So he went a stretch of 4 weeks of just catching 3 balls. And that's very difficult for any wide receiver to have a good production on only getting 5 targets and catching the ball 3 times. And the next time that he had a big game was when Dak was injured against Minnesota, where he went for 122. So from weeks 2 up until Minnesota, he did not have more than 6 receptions, and he had the highest amount of yards he had was 69. And then after the Minnesota game, he did not reach. He only went over 100 yards twice. And his third best game of the year was against Washington, where he caught 7 balls. And I think what people fail to realize is that if you don't treat your $20 million wide receiver like he is a $20 million wide receiver, then he's never going to be able to produce. And I'm sure that Dak could throw up a ball to Amari and he could have 75 yards on one target and everybody can celebrate and everything like that. But it's ultimately on your offensive coordinator, mostly in my opinion, and a little bit on your quarterback for just not seeing where he is. So I'm not really going to blame Amari for that. Yeah, sometimes Amari doesn't really try as much, and there are many times where he'll just, like the Jet game, he kind of just took himself out of that game, whether it was for injury.
Patriots getting
Yes.
locked
Well,
up
the
by
Patriots
Stephon
game,
Gilmore.
that was also in the rain, and any team from nice weather isn't going to play well, which is you saw the Patriots beat the Bills, and I don't think Josh Allen's a lousy quarterback, but they lost to the Patriots, and Mac Jones threw the ball like 2 times, and Mac Jones is nowhere near as good as Tom Brady is. So you can use the bad weather on a lot of quarterbacks, and I
I
think
was just
we
I
can
was
we
just gonna
both agree.
say the game where he went. I think he was thrown to twice and he caught one ball for -2 yards and fumbled.
And I'm sure we can both agree that Josh Allen is a much better quarterback than Dak.
Oh, I was. That's actually stop the presses. Breaking news: Josh Allen is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott from Owen DeChico. So I am very glad that was not what I was trying to do, but now I could pencil that in as a direct quote from Owen. But yes, yes, Amari Cooper getting very small targets during the year definitely is a product of his low yards totals. However, Amari Cooper is considered by a lot of analysts and people around the NFL as one of the best route runners in the game of in the NFL. So my rebuttal to your rebuttal is if he is one of the best route runners in the NFL, is he just not getting the ball even though he's open, or is he not getting open? Because there, and I do see with the Cowboys having 3 or 4 top wide receiver or top 4 not top 4, 3 to 4 talented wide receiver options. You're not going to get the ball as much as you would if you were the first option, second option, and third A option, which Devontae Adams is in Green Bay. But we at some point you have to go into the offseason and say we are giving this player a lot of money and we're not using him as a number one receiver or he's not producing as a number one receiver. And the Cowboys could say both of those things in an either or interchangeably and get rid of him. Whereas if they were to keep him, then they would be paying the $20 million this year to Amari Cooper and taking on that cap hit and using him the same exact way as they did the year before, or even him just not getting open and just being inconsistent from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4 to week 5. But like this is honestly, this is going to come down to, I think, the relationship of the quarterback and the front office. Because if Dak Prescott really wants Amari Cooper to stay, I feel like that he will stay. Because the quarterback, other than the owner Jerry Jones, has a huge say in who goes and who stays. And if Dak Prescott goes into Jerry Jones's office and says, I need Amari Cooper to be successful, Amari Cooper will be back. But I see what you're saying in regards that he's got to get the football to produce. But my rebuttal to you is he not getting the football because he's not producing, or is he not getting the football because of the situation? And both of those answers, I think, would lead you to getting rid of him to try and find the same amount of production for a smaller cost.
Well, one thing that I want to say is that I think the funniest, I don't know if you remember, if you've seen like clips of this, but in the playoff game, Kellen Moore ran a play where you had Terrence Steele and I believe McGovern run routes, and they both had their hands up to catch the ball. I think that in a playoff game just shows how bad like the play calling is. And sure, I'm sure we could have a conversation and we could throw on some tape and we can say how Amari Cooper has all these bad things and how he doesn't really give 100% effort all the time. But you've seen Cole Beasley and Des Bryant talk about it. The front office dictates who gets the ball, and Cole Beasley was at his best on third downs and when Dak and Tony were doing their own thing. And I think that Dak and his offense is at their best when Dak calls the plays and all that. But
except for when he calls the QB draw, they are not at their best.
He did not call the QB draw. No quarterback calls their own plays. Only thing that I've seen close to that was when Joe Burrow said that his headset went out and he had to call plays for a few times. But bravo for him. But
I think he's also said that he lied about his headset going out so he could call a play as well.
But if your head coach and your offensive coordinator say we're gonna call this play, there's no way, no quarterback is gonna be like, no, I'm gonna call this play. Like there's no way. He'd either get cut, benched, or get a stern talking to. And I doubt Dak wants to be get detention. So sure, you can blame it on whoever you want, but you gotta not saying you particularly, but whoever wants to blame Dak, the only thing you can blame Dak for is not going down sooner. But the play call and bad time, that is on the offensive. It was the right play call just because the boundaries were getting covered, but they needed to. Dak needed to go down earlier, but the individual play call was not on him.
The only reason why I said that because I heard based on his press conference after the game, maybe I misheard, but he said I called the play in the no huddle. But who knows? I'm sure before they even went out, they had 5 or 6 plays that they wanted to run, and who knows? Maybe based on the look that he got, he audibled to the QB draw, but maybe Kellen Moore said, "Here are the 5, 6, 7 plays that we are going to run in this drive." Blah blah blah. So who knows what actually happens because we're not there, but. Overall, that has little to nothing to do with Amari Cooper's.
Yeah, but I do think that they're gonna. I do hope that they're gonna be able to keep Amari and D-Lock because if you get rid of Amari, we saw in Gallup's rookie year that Gallup showed flashes, but this offense early in 2018 before Amari was not good, and this team's overall record was not good. And I remember that Tennessee game the week before the bye where they had Amari. I was like so excited. And then that game ultimately led to, I believe, Byard, I think, getting an interception because Dax decided to chuck the ball up to Amari and then he ran onto the star and had a field day. But that, like you said, Amari did turn around that season. And I don't think that Gallup can do what Amari does. He hasn't shown it, at least. He hasn't been given the opportunity to, because when Amari was injured, or when Amari, and also CD Lamb, I know that when Amari and Gallup were down, CD did get concussed against the Kansas City Chiefs, but he didn't have this like breakout game like we would have seen from Justin Jefferson or any other young wide receiver, which is why I don't really think that Gallup or CD are in prime positions to be wide receiver number ones or be the bell cow of catches going into the season. And I don't think that you're going to be able to draft a guy at 24 unless somehow Chris Olave or another good wide receiver falls to you. But you're not going to be able to get what Amari Cooper gives you at 24 unless you sign a guy, I guess.
This is just a hypothetical question for you.
What is it,
let's say the Dallas Cowboys keep every other wide receiver on their team other than Amari Cooper. So your transition from 2021 to 2022 is basically you would still have CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, and Dalton Schultz, and maybe Blake Jarwin if they were to keep
Blake Jarwin is probably going to retire. He hurt his hip really bad, so he's either going to get cut or going to have to retire.
Well, I didn't even write him down. So let's say in 2022 you have CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, and Dalton Schultz. Are you comfortable with that lineup at wide receiver?
No, 100% no. Just because if you go play, if they somehow make the playoffs, if you go play a team that has a good cornerback, like the best, one of the top cornerbacks in the league, and has a good cornerback number 2, unless I'm forgetting something. Gallup has flourished by having Amari there, and no one's seen it, which we were thrown away by having him pull his calf, and Gallup has had his fair share of injuries over the past year, which is why him getting such a big extension is very questionable because what I think they're gonna do is kind of give him the Amari treatment where he gets money in 2 years, and then 2 years from now he gets the we're gonna cut you now, which I think is a really bad way of running a team because no free agents is gonna come to Dallas and want to get treated like that.
Well,
But
they
to
don't sign free agents, so it's actually a
well,
very
yeah, but this past offseason was the first time where Dallas did sign a lot of free agents and it actually worked out for them. But hopefully, but to give a long answer to a very easy question, no, I would not be happy with that, and I think that Dallas would be the second or maybe third best team in the division
that
just
is
based
very
off
interesting.
offense.
That is very interesting. So basically, what I'm hearing from you is that you don't believe that Dak Prescott as a quarterback can elevate these receivers without Amari Cooper.
I'm not saying it's on Dak, but sure, do I think that Dak could have 4,500 yards and Gallup and CD could have these big years? Yeah, they'll be able to figure something out. Um, but I don't know if that's gonna lead to success because you can have as many yards as you want and as many touchdowns as you want, but if it doesn't lead to prolonged success, then what does it matter? So no, I do
I
not think
agree.
that.
I agree, but I don't think that Amari Cooper has really given the Cowboys long term prolonged success as a wide receiver, other than that first year where other than that first season where he when he was traded. Um, so I'm trying to I don't see him as valuable as you do. Um, because I feel like the talent that the Cowboys have, especially with every year the Cowboys being deemed, and I think you even said it last offseason before the season began, that the Cowboys had three potential wide receiver ones on their team with CD Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. So I really think that Amari Cooper, of course, he is a good receiver and he would be nice to have on any football team. But I also think if they needed to get rid of him, they would still have CD Lamb, who this would give him an opportunity to see a lot more targets and grow in his position because they do expect him to be the wide receiver one sooner rather than later. And this would be his opportunity to take that next step. It would still allow Michael Gallup to be that second option. So he would still be in a very similar role than he would be with Amari Cooper. And then also you have Cedric Wilson as your third option, who does flash, who has made big plays in big moments. And then also you would still have Dalton Schultz as Dak Prescott's security blanket. So
Do you think
I really don't see the issue with getting rid of Amari Cooper.
do you think Amari Cooper or Mike Williams is a better wide receiver? Mike Williams of the Chargers, to be exact. I don't know if it's another Mike Williams, but
I think they're very similar. Well, Mike Williams is wide receiver too, in his
yeah. But
I think Amari Cooper is based on skill is a better receiver because he can do more things and has more his route. He's better just all around
mhm.
receiver. But with that being said, um, yeah, I think I would rather have Amari Cooper
Okay.
than Mike Williams because I think they're both inconsistent. They're
Okay.
both
And
inconsistent players.
Mike Williams just got like a 3-year, $60 million contract. So the whole like $20 million is a lot of money, but Tyreek Hill's gonna get paid 20 mil
He
plus.
is. He deserves
Mike
every penny.
Williams just got a $20 million a year contract, and
Yes.
I think Amari is. I think that people, fans, they kind of get stuck into like, oh my goodness, Michael Williams had 40 plus fantasy points in week
PPR.
2.
PPR.
Yeah, and
Fake.
then he kind of just like falls off, and people kind of fall in love with PPR leagues in it over you. They overvalue some players, but I think Amari Cooper is better than Mike Williams, and I don't. I he's probably only a year or two older. I'll have to check, but
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
both going to be getting 20
really
million.
I
But
don't
I
really
think Amari might
see
be getting a little more.
I don't really see the how that question
No,
Um,
because you said about like his contract worth, and I
oh no,
personally
I
I'm not,
meant
not a
just
big fan.
oh, I just meant in the sense of they will be paying him this because the report what with the reason why the report came out is the Cowboys would save this amount of money if they were to get rid of Amari Cooper this offseason. So, based on that, looking at the roster and what players they could potentially still bring back, I don't see a problem with them cutting Amari and saving this amount of money. We've had our contract spiels over and over again, and I don't think Mike Williams is deserving of the $60 million, but that's the market, as you say. Um, so like he got the money, but also with that being said, um, you are going to be judged. Your play is going to be judged based on the money that you receive. It's bound to happen. However, you can throw the money out the window and just say that so and so is not playing up to their positional standard, which is what I say when it comes to salary cap. Because
I feel like you
because
should get judged off of your production.
when you're paid a certain amount of money, they're basically saying we view you as a top wide receiver. So when it comes to the next year and you're not doing that, fans and teams have every right to come back and say, hey, we paid you to be this and you're not being this based on production. So we're going to cut you or restructure your deal or blah, blah, blah. So that's basically the short and sweet spiel regarding contracts and performance and production and etc.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll just say one thing, then we can move on to
Yes.
the last part of this. But in my opinion, any player is going to want to get the most amount of money that they
I
deem they are
agree. And
worth,
yeah,
and
and I agree.
as
And
they
I
should.
and I think every player should try and get as much money as possible.
Exactly.
I don't
And
want that to
if
be swept under the rug. Every player should
exactly.
try and get paid. Yeah.
Mhm. So like my thing with Dak and my thing with Amari is if Dallas probably upon and Tank and all the other players that are good, they probably in initial contract talks gave them, oh, we're going to pay you this. And then they all hit the free agency market, I think, besides Dak. And then when they went out there, Washington was like, hey, we're going to give you $21 million or $20
Mm-hmm.
million or 19. And that's, and if Dallas does not give them that amount or match it or give them more, they're not gonna stay. And
Yep.
in my opinion, I'd much rather pay the guy $20 million and let him go to Washington and have a field day on I don't even know on um Diggs when he was still a rookie. So that's a rookie, yeah, I believe. Or the other or Chidobe Awuzie, which would have been a very rough show. But
Mm.
I feel like you should you should judge players based off of their production, not based off of their the amount of money they're going to get. Because Kyler Murray is going to get $300 million, and he's not worth that at all. And not even based off football, like football playing. If you just want to base him on like if you're a quarterback, you're the leader of your team, and if you had no interest in being a leader, which is odd because he was a baseball player and he was a darn good one, which is if I don't know, I feel like baseball players should be really good leaders and does not make any sense.
Yeah.
So
And I
I
mean, and
he's not worth that at all. And Lamar Jackson, he's been wanting to get paid the last few years. The Ravens haven't for whatever reason. So uh,
yeah, and
I understand.
I do think though for this conversation, I've done my best to grade him based on his performance rather than his contract. Because inconsistency is a huge problem, especially when you have wide receivers like the Devontae Adams, the Tyreek Hills, the Stephon Diggs, who had a more inconsistent year than typically he would, but that was based. I don't even know why, but I just had him on fantasy, and he did not do what I expected him to do. Justin Jefferson being the star that he is, Jamar Chase breaking out, T. Higgins playing well, Cooper Cup, my God, like, but Amari Cooper, he is a very good player. However, well, this is just me closing my this is my closing statement. Amari Cooper, even though he is a very good football player, I think that his inconsistency on the field and the players that the Cowboys still have an opportunity to bring back and have already brought back, they will be just fine getting rid of him and saving money than than they would in comparison to them keeping him and losing and paying money. So that is that.
I want the like inconsistency, sure, but Amari caught 3 receptions, or you can go off targets or whatever. But he caught a ball. He had 3 or less receptions in 8 games. You're not gonna have this fantastic unless, like I said before, blown coverage or it's a go route. You're not gonna have these great games, only getting 2 to 3 targets. And you can blame it on Dak, you can blame it on the scheme, you can blame it on offensive coordinator. But if you want to judge him, like I said before, on the games where he had 7 or even 5 receptions, 7 receptions, 8 receptions, 13, he had 50 or more yards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
but
I feel like this is we're in a very dangerous spot where we could just repeat the entire conversation again.
no, I just feel like the whole like production thing and being inconsistent, sure, but if he caught 8 balls every single game for the year, and he had 120 yards the next, okay, like that's an issue. But if he's getting 2 balls for like 30 yards, the next game is getting 8 for 130, that's not really inconsistency. That's just offensive coordinator scheme and quarterback not seeing them.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I disagree a little bit about that being based on inconsistency, but me coming back then say, well, if you want to keep him, then I would try and restructure his deal because if you he's currently being paid as a top as a wide receiver one, and a wide receiver one is not expected to only catch 2 or 3 passes a game. So I would say if you really want to keep him, I would try and restructure his contract if you can, but if not, then either just take on the money again and expect him to catch 2 or 3 balls a game, or just get rid of him because um, you can find a guy to catch 2 or 3 balls a game.
I exactly. I think that is the bottom line. Either pay him
Yeah,
his amount or don't,
yeah.
depending on how much you are. Uh, and I think
But
I
I do
think that,
think that in regards to Demarcus Lawrence, I think we have a very similar stance on him. He played well enough to stay. However, if they can't get him to stay, then either just bite the bullet and pay him, or get rid of him because you're not gonna he's not gonna back down and take less because that's the report. Um, except if the report
yeah,
is not true. So, but I do think, just to reiterate what I said, because people may have forgotten, I think that their defensive line is a lot better shape than it was a few years, even last year when we didn't know what we were going to get. So I think that the Dallas Cowboys, while they will be a weaker defensive line for sure, because Demarcus Lawrence is very good at stopping the run, um, I think they will still be fine as a unit based with what they could potentially get in the draft or even free agency.
yeah. I don't know. I do agree with that. It's gonna be really
Yeah.
interesting to see what happens because the next week and a half they're gonna have a lot of big decisions to make. But one thing we're gonna end on, and then the rest we will be having a second episode out over the next few days talking about how we thought the overall season went, grading each position and how they did, and then some potential areas of need and draft day things that we think could happen. But one thing we want to talk about is the potential reunion between Dallas and Anthony Hitchens. He was cut, and Dallas is in need of a linebacker depth, at least not a starting one, but he could definitely. Dallas is connected to him as well as mentioned earlier in the introduction. So, do I think that they are going to sign Matt or Tyron? No, not at all. But it is nice to see that there is some type of connection or link there.
Yes, and Anthony Hitchens, if you if you are new to the Cowboys bandwagon, Anthony Hitchens used to play football for the Cowboys, and he was actually he was not. That was Rolando McClain. So never mind, disregard what I was going to say. But he was a very valuable asset for the Dallas Cowboys in the 2014 season, where the Cowboys made a playoff run, and ultimately that playoff run ended in the divisional round due to controversy. But I will leave it at that. Anthony Hitchens, he has not had a great career in Kansas City, but he is
He
a
did get a ring.
he did get a ring, and bringing him back to Dallas, it would just bring even more linebacker depth to that position. So, if they were to re-sign him, I would not have a problem with that.
It'll be a really interesting next few days, and I'm personally excited about it. The combine just ended. Um, Teams are gonna start trading up the next few weeks. Hopefully, probably closer to April, closer to middle of April. But it is I feel like every single year the time between the Super Bowl and the draft gets quicker and quicker every single year, and I, for one, am very excited to see what happens in the next few weeks. I know that Ray is as well.
I'm I love controversy and drama and excitement and setting expectations. So talking about the draft will be fun for me, and also a challenge for me, because I will be honest, I am not usually a big draft person, but with this job you have to learn to embrace new things and learn new things. So I will be studying the draft, and I will be back towards the draft. I will give my foolproof plan to how the Cowboys can win the Super Bowl with their drafting. That is, there's no possible way that plan could be thwarted or changed or altered or stopped, because it's a foolproof plan.
Yeah,
Obviously, I'm kidding.
I for one, am very excited to hear about that, and I'm also looking forward to recording the next few days, talking about the draft and position needs, and crying again because of how bad the playoff game or the wild card playoff game was. But that'll be in the next few days, so I
Yes,
can
and also
shed my
if
tears
the
then.
Cowboys end up doing absolutely nothing in the offseason, there is still March Madness. So
This is true.
this may turn into an All About America's Team March Madness edition. But I doubt that will happen, because the Cowboys always have news to talk about. I mean, who
They're
knows?
always relevant.
We could be talking about Jerry's yacht next week.
Or his wife's art collection.
Exactly. But that being said, that will do it for this episode. We're glad to be back. Thanks for watching, and we will see you guys in the next few days to talk more Dallas Cowboys. This is All About America's Team. Just a reminder, you can find us at All About America's Team on Instagram, and America's Team, capital P, capital C, on Twitter, where I have been very, very inactive. However, I will find a way to be more active in the near future, especially with the off season. Who knows? Maybe I'll even tweet about Russell Wilson today. So
Yeah.
be looking out for that.
And I will make sure to have Ray link my Twitter every now and then. I remember a few weeks ago I did what should the Cowboys do with Amari, and I got a lot more responses than I thought I was going to get. So maybe we can incorporate some questions like that before the show.
Exactly. And of course, as we've learned from our friend slash fellow Twitter mate, Defy, controversy is better than honesty. So maybe we can do what the Mr. Pat McAfee does, Overreaction Monday, where I will be tweeting very controversial things in order to get views. So be
That
looking
is a
out
good
for that
idea.
as well.
It's a good idea. But yeah, it's great to be back. I know the last few weeks or last month and a half has been very, very hectic with school, but it's all for that college degree, baby. So
Yes.
we
And if
the
next and if something happens with that is just devastating with the Dallas Cowboys, we will be here to talk about it.
Yeah, and the next time we post an episode will not be that long of a
Yes.
break, but it's great to be back. I for one was on the edge of my seat all day waiting for this moment, and it's good to be back.
Yes, my delicious flounder that I had for lunch really prepared me for this episode.
We all know it did, but have a great rest of your week, y'all, and I'll be back real soon.
All right,
Go
go
Cowboys.
Cowboys, everyone.